Let's look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 22 and 23. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. On the day when Jesus comes again, countless number of people, millions, billions, will come to him saying, Lord, Lord, we have prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, receive the gift of speaking tongues, and perform many miracles and signs in your name. And why do you turn away from us and not take us to heaven? And Jesus will declare to them, I don't know where you came from. Get away, you abominable people. Matthew chapter 15, verse 21. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. So here we have one side who did so many great things for Jesus, and they say, Lord, Lord. But he scolds them and kicks them out. But to another group, they cannot even prophesy, speak tongues, perform miracles, or do anything special. But he says, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. And takes him to heaven. Then, which group do you want to be part of? Both groups believed in God and believed in Jesus. One group was forsaken despite the fact they did so many great things like miracles and wonders. But the other group did not do anything, but they were taken to heaven. So as we see this, one is true and the other was deceived. Do you believe this? From the time of Adam up to 6,000 years, there's always been two powers, the true and the false. A true God, false God. True Jesus, false Jesus. True Spirit, false Spirit. True Bible, false Bible. False God. True God. So in the time of Jesus, even though millions of people were worshiping in Jerusalem, Jesus appeared and said, those millions of people are worshiping the devil. The God that I am teaching you is a true God. And for the first time, the true God was introduced. But before Jesus came, they could not tell the difference between the true God and the false God. And they worshiped that false God every day as if it was a true God. So who teaches about the false God? Teachers of Satan. Satan's teachers teaches the false. Then who teaches the truth? The teachers sent by Jesus. Jesus' teachers taught about the true God. Because the false teacher is teaching about the false God, the Bible they are using is also a false Bible. And when the true teacher comes about the true God, then the Bible also is a true Bible. And because it's the false Bible, it's also a false testimony. But here is a true testimony of the true teacher. So since the false Bible and false testimony, you become a false Christian. That's why the song, Lord, I Want to Be a Christian, really has deep meaning. On this side, we have true Christians. So false Christians then have false characters. So because everything is false, you can't help but have a false character. But here we have true character. And those who have a false character have false salvation. They think that they are saved. but they are not acknowledged by heaven at all. But these people here receive true salvation. They don't worry about it. So at the end, we have Matthew chapter 7, verses 22 and 23. I don't know where you came from. And they all whipped once and kicked out. But on this side, people here, Matthew chapter 25, 21. Good and faithful sons, enter into the joy of your Father. If you had not committed to the Elijah Gospel Missionary Institute, would you have been on this side or this side? You would have been on the false side. Would you have been in trouble? You would have been in trouble. I hope that you realize you barely received salvation. When you picked up your bag and decided to leave, but you stayed, that was the moment you decided your fate. And those who went back home chose their fate. And they may believe in Jesus 1,000, 10,000 years, but they will not find salvation. They are finished forever. Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the holy in heart, for they shall see God. A long time ago, there was once a king, and as he became king, he had a baby prince. But because this king was very wise, he didn't want his prince, his son, to be born in the palace, which is full of luxury and immorality and vice. So this king committed his loving son to his wife so that she might raise him up in the pure atmosphere of the countryside. And so she was sent to the countryside and he went to the palace. So from that day on, this queen devoted herself fully in raising this little prince. And day by day, this prince grew and he became so bright and so smart. If he was taught just one thing, he could also learn 2 or 3 or even 10 other things. And when he grew to be a young man, he was also a very good archer. So not only did he study well, but he was also good in archery. So if there was a hole in a water pot, he could put mud at the tip of the arrow and shoot that arrow and plug the hole. He was so good. One day while he was playing with his bow and arrows, he shot a lady's water pot that she was carrying on her head, and the pot broke and she was covered with water. And this lady got so mad. She said, "You are so evil. You don't even have a father, that's why." And this young prince, this young boy, heard that he had no father, and it shocked him that day. And he came running to his mother and said, Mother, how come I don't have a father? Tell me, do I have a father? Do I have a father or not? Until then, the queen had concealed her identity, even to the neighbors, and acted like a commoner in front of everyone else. But now because her son was asking her, she had to tell him the truth. You have a father for sure. Your father is not like any other father or any ordinary father, but he is the king of this nation. But when you were young, he left for the palace. And he said that if you want to go back to the palace and be prince, you have to do something. Oh, what is that? I was going to tell you when you were a little older, but since you keep on asking me, I'll tell you. Your father buried a sword under a pine tree which is standing among 7 mountains and 7 valleys. If you find that sword and you bring that sword to him, then he'll recognize you as his son, and he will receive you and accept you and give you the royal power, the throne, the authority, and the kingdom. Really? And this prince was so happy because he had a father, and that his father was alive. And not only that, his father was a king of the nation who could not be compared with any other father. And so he was so joyful. From that night on, he couldn't even sleep. And beginning from the next day, he started out to search for the sword. Mother, I can't wait until I get older. I'm going to start finding that sword today. And he left home with some food. So he has to go to a pine tree among 7 mountains and 7 valleys. But as he looked to the east, the west, north, south, all he can see are mountains and pine trees. He doesn't know which direction, which way, which side to go. So he doesn't know, is it the east, the west, the south, or the north? But because he earnestly desired to see his father and he longed to see him, it didn't matter, and he was still encouraged to go out. He just went to each mountain and each valley, and he started digging under the pine trees. But because he didn't know which side it was on, there's so many mountains, so many valleys, so many pine trees. And he didn't even know how deep under the pine tree it was. There was no way for him to know which side it was. He didn't even know which direction it was, and he just went out. So what do you think? He wouldn't be able to find anything. At times, he met wild animals, and he was chased by them, and he fell from a cliff and almost died. And his once good-looking, healthy face became all scratched by thorns, and his soft hands became blistered and became so rough and hard. At times, he starved for many days. So he collapsed somewhere deep in the mountains, and some passing stranger would save him. Sometimes he was so thirsty that he just collapsed, and people passing by would save him. He went through these hardships for years, and so many years he almost died, but he still could not find the sword. So after many, many years, he came back home, and he sat on the floor, and with a sigh, he said, maybe I won't be able to see my father at all. Just then, heaven was touched by this prince's desire to see his father. And so God showed him where the sword was. So while he was sitting on the floor and sighing, he heard the sound of a cricket chirping, and it was right under him. As he looked down, there was a big cornerstone under his feet. And when he looked at it, there was 7 ups and downs with 7 rows on top of it. So there was scratches going up and down. He saw that it was 7 peaks and 7 valleys, and there was a pine tree pillar, a pillar made out of pine. And he realized, maybe this is it. And he dug, and there was a sword. Have all of you found the glittering sword of eternal life coming here? Have you found the sword of character? Have you found the glittering sword of truth? Our sword was in our house, in our country. In order to find eternal life, in order to find salvation, how much did we wander? We went to this denomination, that denomination, this prayer meeting, that prayer meeting. We were even seized by false religious leaders. We lost our homes, our families, even lost our health. And some people even went to the United States or Japan or even England to study theology and look for God. We ruined our families. We lost our youth. And how many people wasted their time and just went to their death? But where was the sword? It was in our home. It was in our country, our home. So this prince jumped up and down in joy after finding this sword. This was his dream, which was being fulfilled at that very moment. And how many times he almost died looking for this sword. The scenes of all that he went through, looking for the sword, the times where he was climbing up the mountains, being chased by wild animals, the times he fell off a cliff, the times he collapsed in hunger and thirst. He was so excited and overjoyed that he jumped up and down and he held it tight in his arms. So after jumping up and down for a while, he wrapped this sword in white cloth. And he wrapped it again and again, and he put it deep into his clothes. And he left home. He said, "Mother, after I meet Father, I will come back to take you on a golden chariot." And he left. So, how happy do you think the mother feels seeing his son leaving? So this boy had went through so much suffering and training, looking for the sword that he could run and he can go over the mountains and through the valleys for many days without even eating. Yet he was filled with strength and energy, picturing what his father would look like. Sometimes when he slept at night, he held the sword very tight in his arms and slept. Other times, he would sleep in inns or taverns. And when he's sleeping, he would hold tight on this sword. He couldn't lose this sword because this sword was his father. His father, the king. It was his life. Will you also hold on to what you have received? But people don't know how to. You heard how this gospel came to you. The truth was not given to you just for free. But people, they lose it so easily. And they give it to the deceiver, Satan. And they walk around empty-handed. And they don't even know where they lost it and when they lost it. I hope that you'll be smart princes and princesses. But this boy, whether he was sleeping in straw piles or in the mountains, in taverns, but whether he's awake or asleep, his whole mind is focused on the sword. And even if he doesn't eat, he remembers to hold on to the sword. And after many, many days, he finally heard that the palace is close by. So he began to run even faster. And his beat and his heart beat more excitingly. Oh, my father is not like any other father, but he is the greatest king. I wonder what he looks like. Won't he be happy to see me? And his heart is just beating faster and faster. 5 miles, 3 miles, 1 mile. Finally, he can see the palace. And he's never seen such a huge building in all his life. It looks like a mountain. He sees curved roofs. His heart beat even faster. At the gate, there's a tall man, a guard with a long spear. But because his father's a king, he didn't even look at him. All he could think of for so many years is his father, and he could not think of anything else. No one could tempt him, no one could make him afraid. So it doesn't matter who would try and tempt him. Would he not go to his father if he was tempted with food or position or power? So depending on how much we love our real father depends on how much chastity we have to him. Anyway, he just kept on walking. So the guard said, "Hey, who do you think you are that you just walked into the palace?" So when he looked at him, it was a guard. "Who are you?" "I am the king's son." What a beggar. This beggar is saying that he is the king's son. You can imagine what he looked like. Do you think he washed his clothes? Do you think he even took a bath? He didn't have time to wash. He just kept on running. Because he just wanted to hurry up and go meet his father. So he was covered with sweat, dirt, smelled. His hair was all tangled. What? You, a beggar, is saying the king is your father? How dare you say that? You're saying the king is your father? So this young boy looked at him and said, "He's my real father." No adult, no child ever shouted at him like that. He thought this beggar boy would run away, but instead he shouted loud at him, saying the king is his real father. And he was shocked. So the guard looked at him carefully, and he kind of looked like the king. So the guard became a little shocked and said, "Okay, please wait here." So he went to the king and said, "There's a boy, a beggar, and he's saying that the king is his real father, and he won't go. Tell him to come in." So the boy started to walk in to the king. Though he was dressed like a beggar and his clothes were tattered, he walked so proudly like a soldier. Why? Because he had the token which shows that he was a prince. That's why those who have the sword of character, the sword of the truth, the sword of eternal life, have no fear. There's nothing to fear. The judgment, there's no need to fear. They can even climb up onto God's knees and be a baby. Without that, they are afraid to go near him. He goes in front of the king and he bows down. "Are you my prince?" "Yes." "Then show me the token that you are the prince." "Okay." And from his clothes he took out this sword wrapped so many times. With the sword in his hand, he said, "Here it is." The king took the sword and put it in the sheath, and it fits perfectly. So the king came down and said, "My son, my prince, my prince, my son, how much did you suffer to look for this sword? How many times were you chased by wild animals? How many times did you fall from cliffs, suffer from thirst, and suffer from hunger and collapse? Do you know why I had you go through all this trouble? You are to be king over this whole nation and rule over the people. And I wanted you to learn strong will and patience. That's why I had you do this." And the king hugged him and gave to his son his crown, his power, his scepter, and he gave him the kingdom. This king was King Uri. the son of King Dongmyeong, famous in Korean history. Our daddy can take all of you to heaven right now. But he makes you collect junk. He makes you go and work somewhere. He makes you do daily labor or serve without pay. Be a volunteer, and he makes you go through bitter experiences in the world, gives you spiritual drought, and puts you in the light, then puts you in the darkness. But this is all because you are to be the heavenly kings who rule not over this earth, but over the entire universe. So in order to give you the complete, unchanging character, he has you go through all of this. Do you think that the king of the universe has no money and that's why he has you collect junk and sell it? Why then would he make you go through so much trouble working in apple orchards or pear orchards? And even though there is all the words of eternal life, why does he have you go through spiritual drought and then put you into the light and then into the darkness? Even though it hurts his heart, he does all this to train you to become kings of this universe. The sword of the character, the sword of truth, the sword of eternal life, which you have received here, will you take care of it like the little prince? The sword that you have found here is your real father. It's no different than your father. You exchange it for the throne and for the entire universe. But people don't even know what it is. And they just lose it so easily and they walk around empty-handed. They lose it while they're sleeping or walking. Or if the enemy threatens them, they lose it. I hope that you become smart princes and princesses. So if you just have this sword, then you'll not be afraid of the King of Heaven. You can climb up to his knees and play with him. And you don't even have to worry about judgment. You'll just pass judgment. And when you have this, you'll be able to sit on the throne of heaven. You don't even have to worry about salvation. We can be confident in our salvation.